You've never had a red card.
No.
Oh, yeah, you got one now.
That's my first red card from a FIFA referee.
Or
Yeah.
yellow card. I'll see how you're
Yeah.
going.
Hello and welcome everyone to episode number 91 at the Indie Football Podcast. Over the course of the last 36 months almost, we are going to turn 3 next month. We have always enjoyed being in the company of different people who have worked in various aspects of the football industry. With that pretext being established, I am very pleased, and I know I speak for both myself and my co-host Anukarsh Jain to invite Mr. Errol Sweeney to the podcast because if you go to his LinkedIn profile, which I did to do my due diligence, he's majorly known as a FIFA referee, but he's also a mentor. He's also a psychologist. He has also dabbled his expertise into broadcasting. So there's a lot that we'll be discussing today. Errol, for taking out the time. Your LinkedIn message or bio mentioned Ireland. Are you over there right now?
I am indeed, yes.
So how has been the last few weeks and in general life been lately?
Well, we're coming into our winter now.
Yes.
And around Christmas time is the middle of winter. So June, July, August is our summer, unlike the southern hemisphere, where Christmas time is actually their summer. And we lived in South Africa for a number of years in the 80s and 90s. That came about as a result of the employment situation in this country, which was very bad in the 80s. And we didn't go cold. When I say we, my wife and 4 children, we didn't just go there and land in Johannesburg and say, here we are. I had done a fair bit of research, not only on the employment front, but also on the football front. My sister had been living there since 1980. And I've always been something of mine. I don't want handouts from anybody, and least of all from the government. Now, we have, similar to England, we have what's known as a dole system. It's a slang term, but it means getting benefits from the government if someone is unemployed. And I had been in and out of employment around that time purely because of the economic situation, and not certainly as a result of me not wanting to work. I always want to work. And so my sister said, and I had been communicating with her then by telephone and by letter, the snail mail, as they now call it. But with emails, it's absolutely brilliant. You can just send a text and it's gone to the other side of the world in a matter of seconds. So I had been on to my sister and I said, look, I really want to do work. Is there any work out there? And cut a long story short, she said, yes, there is work here. If you want to come out here, there is definitely work to be had. So my wife and I sat down and we discussed it. And we were in a little bit of a quandary because our youngest child at that time was only 6 years old. And we thought, should we move? Like normal parents, were concerned about the children and their education and so on. And as far as I'm concerned, it was the best move that we ever made. And so we moved to South Africa in 1985. And we stayed there until the end of 1998. So more or less 14 years. But I had done my homework as well before I went out, not only on the employment side and work, but also on the refereeing side, because I was a Premier League referee here in the Republic of Ireland. And I had written to the refereeing authorities in South Africa and asked them, could I referee when I go there, telling them my background, my experience, that I was a Premier League referee here. And they said, yes, we'd absolutely love to have you. And I had a contact with a man who's now since passed away, a wonderful man called Aubrey May. And when I got to Johannesburg, he had given me contact numbers and I looked him up, and it all started from there. Shall I go on, or do you want to come in?
No, please
go on. Please go on.
This is on the refereeing side. So I started refereeing there. I went to a seminar on the 13th of January 1985. It was a refereeing seminar. At that time, South African football was a winter league for them, Southern Hemisphere. In other words, the league started around end of February, March, and so on, and went through where the cup final would be in November of that year. They've since changed around now to go like the English Premier League, where they start in August and they finish around the end of May with their cup finals and so on. But so I was there and I went to the seminar and I passed all the tests, the fitness test, the written test, etc., etc., etc. And so I was now invited to join the Premier League. It was then the old first division, like they had in England. And they had a whole revamp of the situation when a man called Trevor Phillips, who's since passed away also, and he came out to South Africa as chief executive of what was going to be a new Premier Soccer League. And so I was still refereeing then, and I was refereeing up to that stage. And then he invited me to come and take charge of the refereeing. So, and that meant I had to retire early, which I didn't really want to do. I thought I had a few more years left. I didn't want to retire that early. But he says, well, you can't do both. They're not compatible. You can't be in charge of the referees and you can't be refereeing as well. You can't be a boss and be a worker. You're either one or the other. So reluctantly, I retired early. And then I took over as head of the referees, the Premier League referees and the First Division for South Africa. And there was a lot of work to be done. It wasn't a great place, great situation. So I made a few changes here and there without going crazy and firing people and things like that. I made a lot of changes and improved the standard. At that time, referees were not wearing proper uniforms. And they were going to games. I mean, really going to games, Premier League games, in tracksuit bottoms and T-shirts. I said, that is definitely not. You're going to have to wear a blazer and a tie, trousers. And I got them all, blazers and ties, which they paid for, in fairness to them. So they were keen. And then they looked a lot more respectable. And I do have some photographs. Pity I didn't have the forethought. I could have sent it on to you. And they looked really, really, really smart. And it's very important when you're going for a job that you look the part. Dress, as they say over here, dress is half the battle. If you look the part, then you've only got to go and act the part because you've already sold yourself by the way you're dressed. But you could be the most clever person in the world. But if you turn up at an interview in rags and a T-shirt and tracksuits and flip-flops and so on, first impressions, they're not always correct, but they're important. And I remember somebody telling me one time that when you turn up for an interview, you should turn up like a newsreader, jacket, tie, looking smart, and that's half the battle. And so that the referees then got a lot more respect from the clubs and from the press because of their dress and appearance. So they're already on a winner there. And then then the other job, of course, was that I had to go and get the guys properly trained and mentored and tutored and going to regular meetings and updating them on the laws of the game and all things refereeing. And in fairness to the guys, they responded very, very positively to the extent that in 1998, 3 South African referees, and this was the first time ever that any country in the world had 3 match officials at a World Cup finals, and that was in France in 1998. Up to then, you get maybe a referee and a linesman, as they used to call them, assistant referees, or you might get 2 assistants or 2 referees. Yeah. Here we had a full team of a referee and 2 assistants at the 1998 World Cup in Paris, in France. And one of my assistant referees, or linesmen as used to call them, actually ran the line in the final between France and Brazil.
How was the experience for him?
That was a big thing for me. It was a big feather in my cap. And I remember before he went, about 3 weeks before he was going to Paris, he was from Cape Town, a lad called Ahmed Salih, and he said, would you come down to Cape Town from Johannesburg and just see what am I doing wrong? I want to polish up any rough edges and so on. And he was doing a game just on an open field. It wasn't the Premier League. And he said, would you just look at me and see what my body language is like and my demeanor, what my appearance is? I said, absolutely. So I went down, and the only thing I could find that I thought might be a problem was that when the play was down the other half of the field of play, not his half, he was standing on the halfway line, but he was leaning over on one leg. You know the way we lean on one leg and then we shift to the other leg?
Yeah.
Don't ever, ever, ever do that. You stand on your two legs with your head up and your flag by your side. None of this leaning to the side and then leaning to the others. Stand with both legs upright. It's only a thing, small thing. I don't know if that contributed or helped him, but he was appointed to run the line on the final. And I was very, very proud of him. And I was happy that my tutorage and my coaching and my mentorship actually paid off. And he's the only South African referee ever to get to a World Cup final. The other two guys, the referee, the late, now passed on, Ian McLeod, and the other assistant referee or linesman was Ari Soldatos. And Ari Soldatos is a lawyer in South Africa, in Johannesburg, and he's still active in appointing referees because I gave him that job because that was my job before I left South Africa. And I recommended him to get the job, and he's still there. But that was tremendous. And then we moved on to 1996, when I had two more another referee and an assistant referee got to the World Cup finals in Germany. And the same two guys were then also brought in, if you like, by FIFA to the 2010 World Cup. So they had two World Cups each. Jerome Damon, also from Cape Town, and an assistant referee called Enoch Mulefe from Bloemfontein. I don't know if you know South Africa. Bloemfontein.
No, I know. Yes. So sorry to just butt in. I know South Africa apart from football, but sports reasons for a couple of those reasons. The first being, of course, initially I was very fascinated by the entire Nelson Mandela's connection through sport and how he had really done a lot with the 1995. What do we say that? Springboks, the South African rugby team. They had led to themselves to the World Cup glory against the All Blacks, that is the New Zealand rugby team. And I know
1995.
995, yes. And I know Bloemfontein because in India, we the biggest sport for us is cricket, and the under 19 cricket World Cup in 2020 happened in South Africa, and the final of that edition happened in Bloemfontein. We know that very well because the opener in that match for India's under 19 team is also now India's first team senior opener called Yashasvi Jaiswal. I don't know if you follow cricket.
I do follow cricket. Yes, I do.
Yeah, so if you know, Tristan Stubbs had also played in that under 19 World Cup, who is now one of the big South African batting mainstays. So among so many things that you had just mentioned, and I'm sure even Anukar sir has many things to ask, but one thing I just could not help but ask you more about. Did you feel that, or tell me more about how did you see the entire sports landscape in South Africa? Did you feel football is the first sport, or no, rugby definitely places itself at the pinnacle of the general masses sporting interests?
So that football is very, very popular in South Africa. Very, very popular among all races, and that's what's great about it now. There's no discrimination, and apartheid is gone, and thank goodness, and may it never ever come back. It's talent that is what we should be looking for. Football is way up there. Boxing is very popular among the Africans. South Africa, the black people, they like the football, they like the boxing, and they like the They're now being introduced into cricket, but they like athletics and road running particularly. But now they're all integrated, and it's fantastic. I mean, some of the players on the Springbok team, some of the black players, are just out of this world. Their skill and their speed and their thinking is absolutely wonderful. There's a great mixture there now between all the races, and that's the way it should be. People should be selected on what they are capable of doing,
Right.
and not on the color of their skin.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And thank goodness that's now being done away. Football, is huge. I mean, there was a man in charge. He was the PRO of what was the NPSL, and then you had the NSL, the National Soccer League, which is
You
now
will have to give us full forms of BRO and MPSL as well.
okay. Well, the PRO is the Public Relations Officer,
Okay,
and
yes.
he was an Indian guy called Abdul Bamji.
Oh,
Okay.
Abdul Bamji, who has since passed away as well. And he was the public relations officer for the league. And he was such a great, fantastic marketeer, how he could market the sport. And every year at the start of the season, similar to what they have in the UK, where they have the Charity Shield, where the
Yes.
winners of the league and the winners of the cup play each other, and it's for charity. Well, Abdul Bamji did the same, except he did it differently. He got the people, he got the fans to write in, to vote which team they wanted in a four-tournament playoff. And then you'd have semi-finals, if you like, at 10 a.m. and 12 midday, and you'd have the final then at 4 p.m. And during the breaks, there'd be all kinds of entertainment and music, and absolutely wonderful, wonderful day. And it raised millions for charities, which was great. And on the one year in 1992, I refereed that final between the two teams that got to the final. And it's guesstimated, it was reckoned by newspaper reporters that there were 110,000 people at the game. And that's the
Wow.
biggest crowd I have ever refereed in front of. But it was a great day. He was a great marketeer, how he sold the game, how he promoted the game.
This is the Indian that you're talking about. It's the Indian.
Eh?
So you
It's
are
the
mentioning
Indian
about the Indian guy, right? Mr. Premji or
Bamji,
AMG.
yes.
Bamji.
Bamji.
Right,
Yeah.
yeah.
He was absolutely super. And I do go to South Africa every now and again, and I was last there about 3 years ago, and he was quite ill. He was quite ill, and he has since passed away. But man, what a marketeer! What a guy to sell a game to the general public. Just fantastic guy.
Amazing. Errol, one of the things which really fascinated me about you was the amount of pressure you have handled matches in, and the things that have happened. So now, while we were talking to you on the group, you mentioned about this incident where you had a gun pointed at you. You also mentioned incidents in which you kind of had to face the wrath of a lot of the bad guys, as they call it. So do shed a bit of light on that. Do tell us a bit about the controversies, how you handled it. Like, just give us throw a bit of light into it.
Well, look, in my whole life, and even today, I want things done not rightly or wrongly, but correctly. Because right or wrong is very subjective. It's your opinion. But there is a correct way and an incorrect way to do things. And I've always wanted to do things the correct way. And I'm not interested in doing things half measure or 50%. I'm in it 100%, or I'm not interested. That's the way that's me. I've always been that way. And likewise when I was refereeing, if there was a foul, I gave it. I never worried about the crowds. I never worried about the players or the reaction. And I never worried about reaction from coaches and managers. That's none of my concern how they react. I will do my job according what was then the laws of the game.
Wow, wonderful.
and it comes in the 17 laws of the game. And if it's a red card, it's a red card. I was watching a game last night. I'll come back to my story, but I was watching a game last night where Irish women were playing the women from Wales in a qualifier for the Euros, the European Championships next year. And they lost 2-1 at home. But the Irish captain, whom everybody's talking about, and it's amazing how the press build these people up to be some kind of, and
larger than life figures.
She was booked. She was booked after 15 minutes, and rightly so. She was yellow carded, and I have them here as well. She was.
I love how you illustrated about things. Okay, yeah, wonderful.
Yellow carded. She was yellow carded after 15 minutes, and rightly so. She committed another foul about the 38th minute, which was a yellow card, and she should have got a yellow card, which should have been a red card.
Oh, interesting. I like how you're using all the props.
It's like a demonstration. This is a proper demonstration.
I have never been given a red card my entire life. This is so cool.
Haven't you? You've never had a red card?
No.
Yeah, you got one now.
That's my first red card from a FIFA referee.
Or yellow card. I'll see how you're going. Just to give you yellow.
Yeah. If we actually implement what a red card physically means to that person, it would be only you and me then in this episode, Errol.
Yeah. So she should have been red carded before halftime. Now, I never looked at, it's only halftime, and she's the Irish captain as well, by the way. Yeah. And maybe I won't do it because she's the captain, and it's people feeling that kind of pressure and players behaving or misbehaving because it's some kind of pressure they're under. That's not my concern. That's not my concern. And I have no interest in that. And I don't want to hear it. If you misbehave, you get a yellow card or a red card, depending on the misbehavior. Finished and done with. As soon as you start thinking about, is that a yellow? I've already booked her now, and or him now, and if I give him another yellow, that'll be a red card, and the crowd will be on me, and the managers will be at me, and if you start even thinking like that, forget it. Hang up your whistle. Don't bother refereeing because you're in the wrong job. You're there to be judge and jury and executioner. You have to see the incident, you have to make a decision, and then whatever happens after that, that's not your concern. Now, what happened to me in South Africa, I was very, very strict on the field of play. I wasn't interested in nonsense because I have a simple philosophy. If you look for nonsense, you'll get it. If you take it, you deserve it. Don't take it from anybody. I don't go looking for trouble. I certainly don't go looking for trouble, but I'm not going to shy away from it either. When I'm on the field, if a player steps out of line, he's going to get his punishment. It could be just a free kick, but I'm not going to turn a blind eye to it and say, this is a very important game. This is a very hostile crowd, or what will the paper say? That's not my concern. My concern is to referee the game according to the laws of the game.
Absolutely.
I didn't make these laws. I didn't make them, but I must apply them. Same with any policeman anywhere. That's what we are. We're policemen in a different situation. A couple of incidents that happened to me. The very first one that happened to me, I got a phone call to my office in Johannesburg one day. And I don't know how this phone caller knew that I was refereeing this particular game on Sunday. This was on a Thursday. And he phoned me and he said to me, and I'll almost quote his sentence word for word. He said, if my team doesn't win on Sunday, you'll get a bullet in your face. And before I had time to express myself in not so gentlemanly conduct and words, he hung up. Now, how did he know I was refereeing that team? on Sunday.
Another
Because
question
in
that
South
I
Africa,
have.
well, in South
Another
Africa,
question
they
that
were
I have
very,
regarding
very
the phone call.
strict.
Sorry to cut you in between, but another question that I have. When he mentioned if my team, did you ask him which of the two was his team?
I didn't get a chance.
So you
There's
did not
only
know
two
which
teams
team.
playing. There's only
Okay,
two
so
teams playing. So which one did he mean?
okay,
Well, I wasn't, because he was trying to intimidate me. He
okay,
was trying to intimidate me, and if I'm going to be intimidated as a referee, then I'll just hang up my whistle. There's no point, because then I'll be afraid to make decisions because somebody might be offended or somebody might be, if their team loses, that's not my problem. If their team loses, blame the players. They didn't defend properly, or the goalkeeper made a slip up or something like that. Why is it my problem? It's not my
yeah.
problem. I'm just there to apply the laws of the game.
Right,
So
right, right.
that was one
You didn't
incident.
you didn't show the book this time around when you said laws of the game. Just
Um,
kidding. Please carry on.
yeah. I've had several incidents. There was another one in a township in South Africa, in Johannesburg, and Tembisa, it was the township, and Orlando Pirates. I don't know if you guys are into football or South African football, but Orlando Pirates would be the way up there, as in the Manchester Uniteds or the Liverpools, or the way up there. And Kaiser Chiefs would be the other team. They would be. My son is a big Liverpool fan.
Uh,
Wonderful.
Doipan gifted me this last birthday. So yeah, this is about
Yes.
Jurgen Klopp too. So yeah, I keep Liverpool related stuff around me.
Yeah.
Even this pillow that I have, this has a Liverpool logo on it. So
Yeah.
yeah.
They're playing tonight, by the way. They're playing Newcastle.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
they're playing tonight. They're playing tonight.
yeah.
So I went to the game, and now it's South African. There were small stands for people to sit on, but most of it was wire fencing. And the Orlando Pirates, if they had won, they would go top of the league. Again, not my problem. If they win or lose, I don't care. If they score goals legitimately, I don't care. And
Obviously, yeah.
so I gave a free kick just outside the penalty area and slightly to the side. And I said to the guy who was taking the kick, I said, don't kick that ball until I've stepped out the 10 yards. He said, yeah, no problem, ref, no problem. And I was nearly at the 10-yard mark when suddenly the ball came past me. And the goalkeeper came running out and crashed into me, fell down, the ball went in the net. And just everybody celebrating a goal. I said, no goal. I went back and I cautioned that player. I said, I told you not to take that free kick until I was ready. You took it. Yellow card. Now you take it again. And this time it was fine. And then that was one goal, but there were two other goals I disallowed in that game. It finished 1-1. And there was two other goals I disallowed for offside. The fans were not happy. They were shaking the fencing. One thing we did have in South Africa, we had excellent referee security, and these were all policemen, either on duty or off duty, and they were very, very, very good. And they got me out of there. Now I had a firearm out there, and I always carried it to games, but I always handed it to the security guys. Say, look after that firearm for me. Give it back to me at the end of the game. So when the game was over, I could see the crowd were getting very agitated. And I went close to the linesman on that side and I said, I'm going to give you a signal that I'm going to blow the final whistle. And when I give you the signal, you run for your life, because they were going to break down the fence. I knew it. And we had to run across to the other side of the pitch and where the dressing room was. And I said to him, when I give you the signal, run. And I'll wait for you around maybe 5, 6, 7 meters, and then I'll blow the final whistle. And we ran. They banged on the door. They threw stones on the roof. They broke the windows. They did everything. Police were very, very good. We were locked in that dressing room for an hour and a half after the game. They had to bring in a police armored car to get us out of the stadium. Now, there was a gap of about 20 meters between the corner of the dressing room and where we would have had to get into the armored car. And I remember the policeman saying to me at the time, he said, "There's your gun, cock it, and I'm going to cock mine." He said, "If I fire, you fire. If I don't fire, you don't fire." So thankfully, I didn't have to fire, and he didn't have to fire. But we were taken out of there in a police armored vehicle. And then the other one was I was sent down to Bloemfontein again to do a relegation match, and it was a serious relegation match. And I almost felt like, I don't know if you've ever heard of Clint Eastwood and Dirty Harry. You know those movies? Have you seen those?
Not
I've
me.
heard of Dirty Harry, I think somewhere, but I'm not too sure if it doesn't.
It's Clint Eastwood as Harry Callahan as a cop, and said, how come you get called Dirty Harry? He said, "Because I get all the dirty jobs." So it seemed like I was getting all the dirty jobs. So I sent down to Bloemfontein to referee this relegation match. And I flew down and got to the hotel. And I remember saying to the manager, "Don't tell anybody what room I'm in, even what floor I'm on. In fact, don't tell anybody that I'm even in this hotel." So when I got up to the room, there was a bullet on my bedside table. Now, I don't know how it got there. It might have been the previous occupant, may have been, but I thought, you know.
Yeah.
So, and I still have that bullet.
What?
I mean, I've been taken out of stadium in Pretoria. I was taken out of a stadium up there in the boot of a police car. But that was me. But you know, after that match, I told you about the penalty, the free kicks, and so on.
Yeah.
And they broke down the fence. I was walking. That was on a Saturday, and I was walking in Johannesburg. I was going to a meeting the following Tuesday or Wednesday, and I bumped into two guys. And they said to me, "Oh, you're Dr. Sweeney." I said, "Yes." "Oh, you did our game on Saturday." I said, "Yes." He said, "You know, man, if we had got you on Saturday, we would have killed you. But now we see you are fair, you are honest, and you always honest. We don't always agree with your decisions, but we know that you're honest. And that's what we want. And you give everybody a fair crack at the whip." And that's me to this day. I like to be fair. I like to be honest. I like to give everybody a fair crack at the whip. You get what you're entitled to, nothing more and nothing less. But it's hair raising. And I know guys who have been assaulted in South Africa and other places. And it's just a despicable action. And any player or any club official who assaults a referee or even threatens a referee, in my opinion, should be banned for life. Should never be allowed to be in charge of a team again. That's the only way you're going to cut it out. It's okay for the guys at the big games. They have all kinds of protection. But you go out there on a Saturday or Sunday morning and you're refereeing a game, maybe on your own without linesmen. What protection have you got? None. So anybody who threatens or assaults a referee should be banned for life.
Absolutely. One thing I want to ask you here is that recently there was this case which you might have heard of, David Coote. He's a Premier League referee, not anymore. He's suspended for that matter. So you might have heard a video came out of him in which he was seen saying mean things about Jurgen Klopp and Liverpool, and another video in which he was taking in drugs. I don't want to name them because YouTube might ban us. So I wanted to ask, when such sort of content comes out and like there is evidence of corruption in the English Premier League, it seems, in terms of referees, what is your reaction as a fair referee on that? And do you think, have you experienced people like that while in your time in Africa or Ireland?
I did see the video of David Coote criticizing Klopp. I did see that. From the information I'm getting, that video was taken some years ago. Well, not some year, but 3-4 years ago. So it's not new. Nevertheless, I'm not sure he was on the Premier League at the time, but he was certainly on his way up. And he was one of the bright up-and-coming stars as a referee in the Premier League. It is said that there's no doubting that he said what he said because it's on video. Unless it's AI related or AI doctored. It may well be, and it may well not be, but somebody in his position should not be allowing himself to be in a situation where he can be videoed saying such things about teams. Now, everyone's entitled to their innocence, and David Coote has that presumption of innocence. He hasn't been charged with anything. So we have to assume, rightly or wrongly, that he is innocent, or this has been AI generated, but he hasn't come out to deny it. And subsequent to that video, he has now, another video has appeared that he's actually sniffing something like white powder. Now, how a guy like that could be so silly to allow himself to be videoed doing things like that is just beyond me. And I say if, because he hasn't been convicted, if he's found to be true, he should be banned from refereeing for life. And I mean for life. I wouldn't even put him in charge of an under 10 game. Referees have to be seen to be above the law. Not above the law in that sense, but promoting a situation that they are seen to be squeaky clean. Their integrity, their good name has to be above reproach. And in this instance, David Coote somehow allowed himself to be videoed making fun of Jurgen Klopp and so on. That is out of the question. And in my opinion, what the PGMOL means, that's the Professional Games Match Officials Limited. They are the guys who appoint the referees to the Premier League and the tier down, the Championship. They appoint the referees and assistant referees. He has now been suspended indefinitely from refereeing any games in the English Premier League. And to me, that's the correct decision until he can come out and successfully defend himself, to say that is not him, and bring forward proof to show that it is not him. But he hasn't done any of that. So it would appear, and I do say it would appear, that what we saw is fact, and he's now being removed from the Premier League referees. Very sad, because he was a bright star and he was climbing the ladder, and now he's gone.
Yeah, I am absolutely still taking the time to let this all sink in, because there's so much of new information that has come our way today, which is something that we don't usually get. As I mentioned earlier, we are closing in on the 3-figure mark in terms of our number of episodes that we have done. But Mr. Errol, I just feel that there is so much that you have to share in general in terms of football. I would also probably now shift to a bit more, how do I put it, contemporary issues around refereeing, because of course now me and Anukash are also planning to write a book around all the conversations that we have had with different people, and so we are trying to pick up certain aspects that we would probably look at as recurring themes through which we would beef them up by examples. So one of the big content themes for us with different people that we have had over in this podcast is how has technology, we have mentioned AI a bit earlier in this show, how has all this, in terms of course, referees have a huge participation role in VAR and all those things. So you of course have very beautifully summarized your initial years around refereeing. Tell us more about how did you see the world of refereeing change with technology, VAR, AI, and where do you see this? How do you see AI and technology really dictating the future of the sport?
Look, VAR, I think, is here to stay.
Yeah.
Many people wanted it removed. The English Premier League teams voted on it and said that each of the 20 Premier League teams were given a vote as to whether they wanted it retained, or it's not a FIFA standard, by the way. Each country's association can say yes or no, we want it or we don't want it. So the Premier Leagues voted on it, and only one team said they wanted it removed. All the other teams said, no, let's keep it. And that one team was Wolverhampton Wanderers.
Yes.
So they said they wanted it removed. It's very important to point out that VAR stands for Video Assistant Referee. Emphasis on assistant. Video Assistant Referee. Assistant. It's an assistant or an assistance to the referee to help him make a decision. Again, I pointed out, Law 5 of this FIFA law book.
If only
Law 5 deals with referees.
If only we got paid every time you showed this book in this show. I mean,
if only I got paid.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Law 5 deals with refereeing. There are 17 laws in the laws of the game. 17 laws with lots of sections and subsections and subsections, etc., etc. But 17 laws. Law 5 deals with refereeing and the duties of the referee. And it clearly states, and I'm going to paraphrase now, it clearly states that the referee's decision is final. The referee's decision is final. He is the boss. He's the man who makes the decision. Not VAR, not the assistant referees with the flags, not the guys up in what they have in England in Stockley Park, which is ridiculous. It's a centre. I think the VAR guy should be in an outside broadcast truck outside the ground making those decisions. But be that as it may, the English tend to do things their own way, and they have their own way of doing things, and they think that they are the best at everything, and if they could only look at themselves in the mirror, they'd soon discover that other people are just as good or better at doing things. You never see these problems with VAR at international games. You only see them in the English Premier League. And last week, where are we now today? Wednesday. Last Friday, there was a game between Brighton and Bournemouth, or Brighton and Southampton. And it took them almost 5 minutes to arrive at a decision as to whether a player was offside and interfering with play. It's very simple on the offside bit. I'm still talking about refereeing now. Very simple on the offside bit. To be offside, you have to be interfering with play, interfering with an opponent, or seeking to gain an advantage by being in an offside position. If any of those components are there, then you're offside. But you know, they have, oh my goodness, they have messed up the offside law, which is law 11, and what was the other one? Handball, which is part of law 12. They have messed it up so terribly that it's hard to know. The old wording on handball was that it was the movement of the hand or the arm towards the ball, not the ball towards the hand or the arm. So if your hand is by your side and the ball hits you, if your arm is static or moving away, that is not handball. If you're moving your hand towards the ball, that is handball. It's very simple. Why complicate the thing? Now they're talking about, making the body bigger, but your arms being outstretched. And
there are all kinds of things going on. And
I cringe. I honestly, and it takes them so long. And again, I have to say it. And sorry, guys, over in the UK. And Keith Hackett is one of my very, very good friends. I have him on my show, my Monday review show, every Monday night at 8:00 here. He's on my show. And he and I agree on this. And he's a former FIFA referee and former head of the PGMOL as well, the head of the referees, as I was in South Africa. And we both agree that they have messed it up so completely that it's hard to know now what is offside and what's not offside, and what's a handball and what's not a handball. And Arsene Wenger has now been employed by FIFA to go around the world and look at different scenarios and come up with suggestions and ideas as to what to do. Now, I think he was he was at the head of the posse, as it were, to say now that this part here is under the arm. This part here you can now score with, where before you couldn't. The handball was from the tip of the fingers all the way up to the top of the shoulder. So even if the ball hit you there and you did that, that was deemed to be handball. Now it's not. So how can you distinguish whether the ball, if it hits you, it's under the armpit here, how do you know if it hit here or hit down here?
Yeah.
I mean, it's just ridiculous. It's just, they have made a total mess of it. And the head of that technical committee is a former Premier League referee, and he was a very weak referee, is David Ellery. David Ellery is the chairman of that committee. And him and his buddies, they have messed the whole thing up completely. It really this whole issue is time to go back to basics. It should be straightforward. Look what they do in rugby. They can make a decision in no time. Look what they do in cricket, how long it takes to make a decision. How long does it take to make a decision in tennis? No time. But in soccer, oh my God. And it's the people who are there, honestly, and I do really believe this. I just talk straight, guys. That's why I've never been invited onto committees and so on, because they don't like my honesty. And that's tough. And if you don't like my honesty, well, then I'm not part of your committee. Let's tell the truth. Let's get back to basics. Football is a simple game. Let's keep it simple. What can be more simple than passing the ball to